All right. Thank you for tuning in once again to the White Lotus of Light conversational series. I am thrilled to have my friend and just an absolutely fascinating man, Grant Eagles, with me here today. We're going to cover a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about Grant made some really impressive calls the previous time he was on the show, and I forget the second one. I think he may have called Ukraine as well, but he called that the big medical event that's been going on globally would start to collapse. And so we're going to kind of touch on that and just go a little bit over, give Grant a victory lap on that because he deserves it. Those were big calls and he got it well, and just sort of tie that up. And then we're going to be talking a bit today about the Georgia Guidestones. And we're also going to be talking about this theme that keeps coming up both in my personal gnosis, working with the angels, as well as I'm seeing it in several different, it's come through to me from several different sources, both in a fully political context and also in a more spiritual paradigm. And of course, Grant has threaded the two, and some things that Grant have said dovetail into that. And that is this idea of that there's multiple layers of a sort of new world order that are attempting to come in, and that maybe one of them's fake followed by another one. And maybe Grant's even saying, we had a little conversation before we started, that even that second one may not be going the way that it was looking like. I know it's a bit mysterious, but stay tuned for the second half, because I actually think that's going to be by far the most interesting part of this conversation. With that said, Grant, you made a call back in December on this show. Viewers can go back and check it out. You said that the global medical emergency the wheels were going to start to come off the cart. And things were looking slightly rickety when Grant said this, but let me tell you something. They looked far more close to where they were in early 2020 than they do to now. That's the degree of difference between how much that medical emergency is dominating things now, which is barely at all, compared to when Grant made that call. It was the medical tyranny was still in full effect. And so, Grant, how did you know that, if you can go into that? And secondly, where do you see things going as far as that medical emergency? Just real quick, just yesterday, they said no more masks on American domestic flights. People took their masks off and cheered, according to people I know who are on flights. And the flight crew clapped. Everybody clapped. There were some idiots who kept their masks on, of course, but most people were like, yeah, fuck this. So Grant, please.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, like I know some serious people that got skin in games, and it's not a matter of having a phone call and what's kind of put out there is people give you fucking what's going to happen next or whatnot. But understanding that this is more to do with magic than anything else, and event driven. And it was around, for me, August, that things were starting to take place more allegorically and symbology wise, that it was headed towards that. And then I was able to have a conversation with someone that said, look, it's looking like around the back end of March. I'll tell you exactly what they said to me. Is at the back end of March, all of those programs will be closed. And for me, I'm like, okay, and understood that it'd be around the 22nd. So, and it was like, all right, I know that. How is it actually going to go? What are the other key markers of that? And if folks want to go have a look at around that December, January time, you could see that the wheels had fallen off, like politically, talking heads. And that, like in Australia, we had a lot of people that went and had the, the double, that got the what, and we're like, right, you've got to be shitting me. Like, yeah. What, a headache and this type of stuff. Mm-hmm. But yet the talking heads continued speaking about it. And around that time as well, the genie started to come out of the bottle with some of the soccer players in Europe. So there's still a lot to play out in the revealing of all of that. Not to say that certain groups will try and give it another go, but the general populace now are done with it. It's like, fucking no. And the only talk that is really running about is those that are addicted to emotional imperialism. Yeah. And they're the loud voices that we think that they're the majority, but they're actually not. They're the ones that are yelling and screaming. You know, the same as with the climate change agenda and all the rest of that. It's actually a very small few, but you know, they're just emotional about everything, that they want to dominate with, you need to do what I say because of this, and if you don't, you're a this. There is no actual rationality about it. So you can see now, even like over there in the US with Jen Psaki, it's all emotional. Like, she's been caught out so many times, like lying, and it's just continued. And we're at this stage now with what we're just talking about, is that I know everybody's like, oh, waiting for like one day that it all goes pop. It's not going to go down like that. It's going to be from the populace that turn around and go, no more. Like, we don't believe anything that comes out of your mouth. But the talking heads are still going to pretend that they're helping when they're not.
So do you think that we'll continue to see policies rolled back? Because like here in the States, like this judge in Florida who is they make a big deal, it's a Trump appointee, like that matters, ruled that the CDC had overstepped by making a mandate on the planes. Yeah. And then the Jen Psaki and the Biden administration tried to push back and say, oh, it's anti-science, blah, 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 and whatever. But then later they kind of had to release a statement saying, yeah, it is actually like legally, like it's defunct now. And literally the instant they did that, I forget if it was United, one of the major American airlines, United, I believe, came out and said mask mandate's over. And then Alaska Airlines, another pretty major but not quite as big one, came out and said the same thing. And I had a friend of a friend who was on the plane, and they made the announcement on the plane, like almost in real time. And everybody, especially, they said that the attendants like practically ripped them off their face, the flight attendants, got them off as fast as they could. And then everybody in the plane was like, oh, we can take that off. And people started spontaneously cheering and clapping. And she said it was the vast majority of people in the plane were like cheering and clapping. Some people still had their mask on like morons, but
this is what I mean. Like, have a look at this. There's a frequency war, okay, and a magical war. We've got people now cheering for these things while these other people are still trying to use glamour and illusion to get their way, and it's just not working. So the more that each individual in their sovereign capacity says, no, I'm not even going to fight you anymore, because the more I fight you, the more I feed you. And this is the game that we're really, really at with all of it. So it's fun times to observe it, glitches in the matrix of perceptions type stuff, to really go, okay, and as what you were just saying then, where you're like, well, all right, which way do I go about it? Do I actually even worry about these folks that have been in a hypnotic state, heavily conditioned with MK Ultra, which is, everyone has that infection, that are walking down a Trojan horse path with this emotional imperialism stuff, yeah? Like the race wars, the gender wars, after the kids stuff and all the rest of it. And everybody's wanting things to stop right now. It's like, this all needs to play out. And when it gets towards the end, the reversal's there. What is actually your emotional expression of that? Is it a cheer? What actually is that? Because that there is the energy that we all have played in with being mind controlled, that's propped up this system. Now we're decoupling from it by celebrating a transient period.
Yeah. Well, and I couldn't agree more with you on all that stuff. I guess what I'm curious about is you said that talking heads would continue with and so forth. And what I was going to say is today the Biden administration, this is such a fucking politically just stupid move on their part. But rather than just letting that one go, which they really ought to, because the airlines are giving them a pretty strong signal that they're done too, and everybody hates it, right? The airlines coming out to me is huge. They're like now trying to double down and saying, we're going to appeal that decision, whatever. And I'm like, cut your throat more for the elections. You won't be able to steal this election. Like it'll be a tidal wave if you keep this up. Because like you say, everybody's done. Do you think that they're going to continue to try and enforce these kind of things? Or do you think we're going to start seeing more legislative rollbacks? Like, for example, vaccine mandate to come into the United States by plane. Do you think that'll get rolled back? Things like that. I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, there's one part rollback, and then the other part is people just not doing it anymore. Fine me. I'm not paying it.
Yeah. Right on, man.
That's what we need. No, fuck you. Who is this person that's putting this law in? What is your background? Are you a part of this Soros? This is what I mean. Like, this has some of the stuff with the Ukraine as well. Like, who is your master? Because clearly you don't serve us. You're selected, not elected. And then that's what brings up all of the things which you guys, you know, the elephant in the room is the election stuff, which is like right on the doorstep, like big fucking time that then breaks through for the local level. And, you know, the Obama 2.0 have to appeal this because they've radicalized a lot of positions. And if this doesn't go through the way that they want, the pushback by even those that, let's say, were Democrat once upon a time that are now in the center. And this is what I'm seeing all across the world.
Yeah.
You know, we hear, right and left. And I'm looking at it going, that's still just talk. You've got more people in the center now that are wanting the same thing. And that same thing is, fuck the government. Get them out of here. Like, why am I paying all of this? What is with this? And don't need to go all the way down the rabbit hole now to figure out that the institutions that are there to supposedly support are reversed. They're there to take away. Do we just, no, I'm not doing that. Like you just say here in Australia, we're at 26 million people. If 1 million people turned around and said, I'm not paying taxes, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, it's game over. And we're at that stage. What is that Berlin Wall moment? How does that play out? Because you guys over there, like, use arm to the teeth. It's like, what is that moment? But there's still this element of these radicalized, you know, they worship Bollock, really. Moloch and Baal, as you know, we spoke about previously, and they got no idea about it. No idea that the emotional imperialism and what they're actually feeding and all the rest of it. And it's a small minority that have got control of certain things. And even those things that they've got control of are parts of projects and programs, being, you know, Twitter, Google, Facebook. A lot of that stuff was from DARPA. It's being moved out to essentially control the marketplace. And what Elon Musk is doing at the moment, I'm seeing that as, you know, another one of these things. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Elon's doing this. I'm like, I think he's placed to go, I'm going to do this so that the exposure and the talking points of it, where you're going to have investors go, what the fuck's actually going on with this now?
Yeah.
Really,
I'm just curious, Grant, do you see, I am really like, there's two people that I kind of like can't get a beat on that are major figures, and Elon Musk is one of them and Putin is the other one. Do you think these guys are independent assets? Do you think that they like played the game to get where they are and then now they're turning? Or do you think that they're like a stalking horse, cat's paw, like controlled opposition type figure?
Not at this point of the game. Not at this point of the game. Like, if you have a look at Elon's story, you know, he has a history of some very aggressive moves, you know, and taking over companies, you know, like with PayPal, and, you know, he fucked a few people over and all the rest of it, but business is business, so to speak, you know, once he got an IQ of like 167 or something like that, he's, you know, he's on the spectrum, but I think he has been a part of a placement with certain things, but at this time, you can see like it, you know, what's happening very early on, like NASA essentially, you know, handing stuff over to him for him to do. When I first seen that, obviously, you know, you can jump down the rabbit hole if you're all about they and them. But you know, for me, that was signals about there's something else going on here. Is this an avenue to move out of the confines and constructs of the systems of NASA and the patent office and all the rest of these things that are heavily controlled by other assets of backside? Is this an avenue for things to become more front side and exposure? Like, look what he's done with Starlink and a whole range of different things. A lot of people can shoot the shit and go, oh yeah, I think it's this. But then rather than think, they go, oh, I know it's this. And it's like, well, you don't have the data. You really need to sit there and weigh all of these things up now. And it really looks like for me that, you know, he's the best way I can explain Elon is with him being on the spectrum. And I know some folks on the spectrum that are super intelligent, is that they see a problem and they want to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And Elon has a history as well, where someone will suggest something about Tesla on Twitter or whatnot. And if he thinks it's a good idea, it's implemented within 24 hours. You know what I mean? So he's one of these guys that big brain loves all of that stuff. And he's like, okay, like Twitter now, let's have a look here. But with his issues that he's had with the SEC and all the rest of this stuff, it's a very good exposure point to get in there to actually see the algorithms and all the rest of this. And he's laid out the hints already. Yeah. Oh, I want to open source it so that everybody can see what's actually going on. So then you're going to see what a lot of the, you know, conservatives have been talking about, that they're being silenced and all the rest of this stuff. And this type of nonsense thinking, this emotional imperialism, is being promoted as if it is what the majority is actually talking about, but it is not. The majority being suppressed, and that's what's given the fruit for this climate change agenda, Green New Deal, you know, all of the perceptions of what actually the populace actually want is not there. Mm-hmm. So you've got, let's say, normies that just go along to get along, but they'll follow the winning train, so to speak. Oh yeah, this is a good talking point, but these talking points are actually manufactured. Yeah, and the marketplace is dominated by the repeated type of things. So, you know, the psychological warfare component does not, you know, the major battlefield of it is that Twitter space. It really is. Like, I don't know what it's like for you guys in the States, but here in Australia, the news can be talking about something and will bring up someone's tweet about it to verify their position on it, like it's some type of other expert opinion.
This has been going on. It's got a blue check, Grant. It's got a blue check.
This is what I mean by I see, ears hear, mind believes. Yeah. And we're at this point now where the psychic driving has been run so fucking hard that it's all at breaking point. It's going to take time, and people get frustrated because they're like, oh, you know, I just want it to end. Why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? And it's like, if you actually knew the mechanics of the backside, you would understand why this is going to take a long fucking period of time. It's not just a matter of how you perceive the world and what you think is going to work when you haven't even really done any technical analysis or big time strategy into how big things are. Like, just one to throw out there for your listeners is, not a lot of people actually realize how big of a jump 1 million to a billion is.
Yeah.
Like it is fucking astronomical. Like, you put down, what is it, a million seconds, and how long your life would be just with those seconds, and then put a billion down. And when you see that measurement with something that affects you, you realize how big a fucking $1 billion is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I'm real quick, just to let, what's the difference between a million, a billion, and a trillion? Oh, never mind. That's a million seconds is how long it is, if this thing will ever open up. Yeah. It is a A million seconds would take over a week and a half to elapse, but a billion seconds would take 32 years, and a trillion seconds would take 31,688 years. You would have had to start a timer back in 29,673 BC for a trillion seconds to elapse. So the difference between a week and 30 years and then 31,000 years. And it really, I do like the time one because it really helps you to like grasp.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Now with the way that, you know, the MK Ultra has been put into us, we don't actually have the real perception of it. We hear these terms and just think, oh yeah, a billion, a million, yeah, whatever, just throw it around until you can actually get how big that actually is with a cause and effect type of thing of how it actually relates to you. And utilizing time with money is fucking massive, because then you're like, wow, like that's big. A week to like fucking 30 something years, like fuck. So when you're hearing, you know, a government, oh, we're just going to spend $1 billion on this and $1 billion on that, like it's nothing. It's like, that's fucking huge. And with you guys are talking fucking trillions, man. Like, that's, and this is what I mean. We're really at this point now with, you know, Babylon falling. All of these systems that have been propped up by these fundings, but it's being supported by the echo places of like Twitter, Facebook, and a lot of influencers that are out there. Then they were placed. They were put there.
Absolutely. And I mean, so much stuff has come out about, you know, various Hollywood groups and like sports stars and stuff, and that they get paid. They get paid to say whatever about whatever. And people act like it's spontaneous, and it's not spontaneous. It's that they're being paid to do it. Some of them are just jumping on, hoping that they'll get paid in the future one way or the other. And so, yeah, no, the amount of like opinion shaping stuff it's just out of hand. And I like what you said earlier about the intensity of the psychic driving and so forth. I think it's kind of they reached a point of diminishing returns at some point in the last couple of years. And that since then, it's almost having the opposite effect of it's getting so in your face and so obvious that it's starting to have the opposite result of what they seem to want. And, you know, some big examples of that are very controversial is this bill in Florida with the children and talking to children kindergarten to third grade about sexuality, you know, which I'll just go ahead and say it. There's no fucking need to do that. There's no public health reason. If you were to talk about those same subjects with your coworkers at work who are adults, you'd get fucking fired or at least talked to by HR, you know? So what the fuck? And look, I'm all for having access to birth control if people want it. You know, to talk to like now what would be menstruating young women, you know, who are like 6th, 7th grade, who maybe their families didn't take care of, and you can make a public health argument at that point. There is absolutely no fucking reason to talk to kindergarten to third graders about sexuality. If that needs to happen at all, that should happen within the home, and hopefully the kid would be leading that discussion with questions, and it would probably be not very much, because guess what? Kindergartners, third graders, I have a 13-year-old son, they don't give a shit. Doesn't register in their brains. They know you go to a different bathroom, and that's about the extent of whatever. They might say, where do babies come from? But they're not going to be like, hey, so I feel really emotional. Does that make me a girl? Or, oh, I'm very athletic. Does that make me a boy? They would never ask questions like that. And there's no fucking reason to talk about it. And then people can do whatever the fuck they want when they become adults, and you can give children baseline stuff. And the very fact that there's this huge argument about it, because it's pushing this whole inversion system that you talk about, it just goes to show that, like, A, it's being pushed to the nth degree, and B, like, it's really starting to have a opposite effect of what they initially wanted, because people are like, what the fuck? Go ahead.
It's that you bang on with the opposite effect, but this was always going to happen with the sequence. You know, we can speak about the Georgia Guidestones now, because this is what I mean. A lot of people get caught up. People get caught up into this and actually think that this is the battle, but that battle was lost. Yeah, like we never met it at the narrative. What's the next narrative? Okay, the next narrative right now is their one world religion. Okay, how do you bring that about? Yeah, you do it with the kids. Now, people think that it's happening with the kids now. I don't know if anyone's spoken to a 16 or 17-year-old at the moment who think of like the whole climate, like all of these things that want socialism and all the rest of this stuff. They've already been indoctrinated. Yeah. So they're 16 and 17-year-olds now having children. Like it's like some of the shit that I've seen with mothers at the moment that actually want their kids to be trans because it's cool now. You know, this is that level of insanity that is moving more towards this, you know, one world religion aspect where they're going to roll out their antichrist and, you know, do their, it is going to play out. And that's kind of what I see is next on the cards.
So have you seen that on that point? And then we can, and I do want to get to the Georgia Guidestones specifically, because that's such a big topic in, I don't know, conspiracy circles or whatever. But the one world religion thing, I saw a thing and I haven't been able to verify it, but that they're attempting to make some sort of one world, like they're saying it's some peace city or something like that. I want to say it's in United Arab Emirates.
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah,
it is, and they're going to have a synagogue, a church, and a mosque, but they aren't going to actually really be especially synagogue or church, like because you can't, because of laws in the UAE, you can't actually talk about Christianity. I don't know about Judaism, what restrictions they might have, but so it'll be like a church, but without a cross or Jesus in it. And
well,
then
this is what I mean. Like this whole antichrist, like the third temple's already been constructed in Israel, and there's a gentleman running around at the moment doing certain things and all the rest of this type of stuff.
Where is that temple being built? It's not being built on the Temple Mount, is it?
Probably a conversation for another time, my man.
Oh, okay. All right then, brother. Yeah, that I'm interested in because I
like there's stuff around there at the moment. What do you think they've been doing underneath the Dome of the Rock and stuff like that at the moment?
You know,
like, this is what I mean.
I met a rabbi a long time ago.
Yeah, this is another thing as well. Remember that war that happened a couple of years ago? Like what Hezbollah were fucking shooting rockets and they activated the Iron Dome. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice to do a little bit of a test run with Bluebeam? Yeah,
interesting.
I knew that at that time. Like I was on record saying that, where it's like this is perfect opportunity to be doing that type of testing, you know. And getting back into history, there's a lot of stuff underneath the ground in Israel. You know, it's an ancient spaceport of the Anunnaki, particularly Enlil, and all the rest of that type of fucking shit show that, you know, but won't go down that rabbit hole. But sticking now, the sequence of these, you know, this magical side of things with the Georgia Guidestones, a lot of people are looking at it going, oh, they put that there because they need to tell everybody what they're up to. Okay, cool. You know, that's true. But this is what I mean by the psyops and the inversions. So many people are focused on that and the Depop. Yeah. And the Depop. And that's where they can go to go, yeah, that's the verification upon what I'm actually thinking. But if those there were placed to get to this period of time so that everybody jumps in, and the way that everything is looking, they're running down a certain thing, there's a whole nother fucking shit show going on backside that is being pushed front side at certain points. And one point there is this kind of new world religion. Like you're hearing about it at the moment through all of the circles is you know, Project Bluebeam and all the rest of this. And, you know, people have got a handle on it in their own perception, but you're like, they're broadcasting this for a particular way so that people get distracted in all the rest of it and not actually have a look at the sign symbols and the allegory and the astrotheology of what they're actually trying to pull off here. And it is those types of things.
Interesting. So with, you know, a lot of people fixate on that 500 million number, and it's interesting because for what it's worth, with doing, you know, I'm an angelic theurgic magician, and working with the spirits, they have told me that there is going to be pretty significant depopulation over the next few years, and that it's kind of seems somewhat baked into.
Can I throw a curveball in?
Please, okay. Please, by all means.
Because people are looking at it only from our time space, okay? But this happens all the time throughout history. Look what happened to the Native Americans. Look what happened to the indigenous in Australia. Look what happened in Africa. Look what happened in China. Look what recently just happened in the Middle East. This continually fucking happens. And now we're at a point, particularly with the Five Eyes nations, where we've all been comfortable with our lives in our MK Ultra, that we think that, oh, this is a significant event and this is what it is. And so we're running around trying to make sense and put things there where this is actually cyclical, that it continually happens as a sacrifice to Mr. M and Mr. B. You know, this is a continued cycle, and we continually emanate the past into the future, and we're never able to catch things out in the now moment because we're always distracted. You know, we want to be in the town square having the conversations which are important, but not too many folks want to go outside the town square on top of the mountain and look at the asylum.
Yeah.
When you actually have a look at the asylum, you can go, holy shit, everybody has, you know, and rightly so, it's all there to make actual logical and rational sense and common sense as well, that this is what it would actually look like. And they're going to do this. But it's like, it's not them that do it. It's always been us that do it. Look what's going on at the moment. Is it them that's actually doing it, or is it our brothers and sisters that have been hoodwinked that are actually implementing this?
Yeah.
That's the reality that we have to face. Yeah,
right. They consented to the
looking
one.
for the fucking villain of these power structures. But what they've done, like when you've had narcissistic abuse, okay, what happens is that you end up with the narcissist mind. Okay, we have the predator's mind. They're essentially just allowing things. And at the moment, as you know, yeah, we've got the race war, gender war, all the rest of these different things where there's no actual commonality in language. And you start to fucking outlaw language as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you break things down even further and further where there's no actual logical sense, and people will do the bidding upon their program's perceptions and beliefs and their ideology that has actually been given to them by somebody else. And this is really where we're at, because we're still looking at them, they're doing this, when it's like, no, it's fucking we are. And that's a bitter pill to swallow. We are the villain of ourselves.
And it's interesting that you would say that, because I've noticed again and again with the current Depop agenda, you know, it's pretty clearly there's some aspect of it, and I believe it's a magical aspect, that requires the consent. People are having to consent. They might be getting their arm twisted. They might be being threatened. They might be doing whatever, but no one's literally holding them down and shoving it into them. Not even in like the most egregious places on earth where this plan has rolled out. I'm not aware of a single instance of where it was forced upon anyone, literally physically forced. Were they coerced? Were the jobs threatened? Were they denied access to certain things? Absolutely. But were they actually held down and forced? No. And if not, if it's just a matter of like, oh, let's just kill a bunch of people, then surely they would be doing that. But the consent seems to be key to it. And then that ties right into what you say. And okay, well, what about the Depop of all the poor people in the third world who are going to starve? Well, like that's blah, blah, blah. No, all these people who have allowed and gone along with all the lockdowns and all the bullshit and all the like supply chain stuff, that people didn't riot and force Dubai Ports World to open up the port of Los Angeles, you know, and that there wasn't like a mass rebellion to say, no, we got to open this up. People need to eat. We need to keep the goods flowing. At some point along the way, a lot of people, not one or two, but a lot of people have consented to these decisions that are coming from up above. Oh, well, I had to, oh, blah, blah. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying there hasn't been a lot of coercion. There absolutely has. But at some point, there is almost always in all of this some element of consent. And that is really has some really interesting implications, both magically and in terms of psychologically, and what we need to get to the root of.
Let's just jump into the symbolic magic of it. Have you got a $1 bill on you, bro?
Yeah, let me see if I can get one. I think I do. Yeah. All right. I'm sure you want to focus in on that backside, probably.
Exactly right. Okay. Now, what people don't understand is that is the talisman of their magic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have been threatened not to be able to utilize their magic of value exchange.
Mm-hmm.
So you have gone and put something into your body rather than to be still playing around with their system. So what are you actually consenting to with the you know what? Is you're consenting to the system to still be still be going. This is really where we're at with the choice of the sovereign now. Yeah. I can go into detail about it, but I don't want to lose folks. Just, wrap your head around that, because where we are headed to, and we're in that phase of it now, the shifting of ages and the change over years. Value is no longer going to be what it has been. Value is going to be knowledge. Yeah. Knowledge. And how do you apply it? How do you action that? Yeah.
Skills.
Exactly right. Well, we're supposed to have a government for the people, by the people. We don't, because the people are stupid. We've got people who don't even know their rights. Both RIGHTS and RITES. Yeah. Their RITES is that $1 bill.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I have an emotion. I want something to eat. I need some crack. You get what I mean with this emotional imperialism, and what are we actually feeding? Like, it goes fucking deep, man, deep.
Mm-hmm.
And this is this whole, horror Babylon type stuff too. Yeah, horror Babylon.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to go a little bit more into what you're talking about with this one world religion, and sort of. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself because I really want to get to that. I'm really interested in your take on the second half, which we're going to go into more, and I'll just tease it again here a little bit for people. Just that talking about how there's this current system that's crumbling. I think almost everyone sees that.
It's not it is finished.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's completely finished now, but it's not going to just happen overnight. Like, a good example, just sorry to jump in, but it's really good example. Yeah. Look at when the Berlin Wall came down. Okay. Mm-hmm. The Soviet Union fell apart years beforehand.
Yeah, true.
Okay. We're at that stage. What is the Berlin Wall moment, And I hate to be the bearer of fantastic news. It's not going to be next week. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot that needs to play out, and it is going to need each and every person in their own sovereign free will decision upon what they actually do. Are we going to continually play this scapegoat game, or are we actually going to go, no, that was once, this is no more. This is the way to go through. And we're seeing that.
Yeah, there is a lot of effort to be setting up scapegoats. I'm actually going to be doing an interview with a friend of mine who's a lawyer, and I think I don't know if he's a professor of international law, but he's very well versed in it. And he actually has an international law NGO, and we're going to be talking more deeply about the Black Nobility, which are Venetian and Tyrian families from the Near East that have been around since fucking at least the Roman Empire, if not much before, who understand this Babylonian money magic, and in my opinion are behind the monetary system, and it's hard to really drill down and find out, and nobody really knows for sure who really runs things, but about as close as you can get researching wise to at least the human end, right? I believe there's non-human behind this.
Yeah.
But the Black Nobility that's where the buck stops. People want to go, oh, the Khazarian mafia, blah blah. That's the layer right before the Black Nobility. The Black Nobility had been for hundreds of years doing the international banking thing, long before the first Khazarian left the settlement, and that where the Tsar caged the Khazarians after defeating them, essentially, which is more or less like a Native American reservation. So I'm going to go into a lot more depth on that. But the reason I bring that up is because I notice the Khazarian mafia, which is to say that's a more sophisticated way of just basically coming up with maybe a slightly more precise, but wandering the direction of anti-Semitism, if not outright anti-Semitism. I believe the Khazarian mafia exists. I believe that some amount of people who happen to be Jewish are certainly bad and are major operators in all this system. But when people want to wrap it up in a bow and go, here it is, all the world's problems can be solved by just blaming any group. I don't care if it's the Catholic Church, which again, big player, not the end of the end all be all. You want to blame just Jewish people, just Freemasons, you know, just whoever. You're not getting it. If you think that it's any one group, it's just the CCP. No.
This is what I mean. And, you know, I've tried to explain this over the years, and I just don't think the timing of it has been right, because there's a lot to digest. But a lot of people go on, you know, the New World Order. No, the reality of it is the New World Order was to be able to bring all of those different cults, covens, programs, families, and all the rest of it under one umbrella. Yeah. And to be able to dominate. And they all fight. And what we're watching right now is that they're all fighting each other at the same time. So we hear this, you know, white hat, black hat. It's like, well, it's fucking, I look forward to hopefully in 10 years time where they make this into a fucking 20-part series and you get to see the whole James Bond type of stuff and everything play out. Because the element that a lot of people forget is the gray element. You know, and I reference the Jedi quite a lot because you've got the Sith, which is, you think, more of the satanic side of things, and you've got the Jedi, which, you know, you can be blinded by the light and you can, you know, those types of things. But in the Star Wars canon, the gray Jedi are the most powerful. You know, and this is where they're more shamans, you know, able to they understand the cosmic law. Yeah, so rather than the pendulum swinging, they're in the middle, yeah. And there's a great more deal of power, but there's also a lot more consequences in relation to that. You understand this as well as a lot of other adepts that really go into the mystical arts, where you have, like, it's not easy to stay on that middle path. A lot of people fall over to one side and become very zealot.
Yes.
And, you know, we're really in this time of all of that as well. And at the same time, you've got individuals from some of these families that are utilizing this opportunity to abort mission, you know, because they really didn't have a choice in it.
Yeah. Yep. They grew up in this, you know, a great example. Right. And you talked about it in your show last night, Hunter Biden and the Biden laptop.
Like, and fucking, did you imagine having his life as a child?
No.
You know, like, and that's what I mean. We're going to sit there and scapegoat him with what's about to come out and all the rest of it. But we need to actually have a look and go, hang on, you know, every perpetrator was once a victim. Yes. And really have a big look at this rather than just doing the goldfish thinking about it and go, hang on, like, can we have the adult conversations about this? Yeah. And listen to, you know, can say some experts and some others that can actually map it out in a particular way and go, hang on, there is so much to this that it starts to break the conversational barriers to go, this is one of the main problems of our own thinking. Well, we need to really get into the understanding that the moment we're in the cot, we're fucked. You know, like the way that our parents have been brought up and all the rest of it, like, it is what it is. But can we, in this now moment, you know, quoting Michael Jackson here, fucking have a look in the mirror and make a change, you know, and actually go, look, like, yeah, there's some fucked up shit. It's messed up, you know, but where did it begin? Like, where is its origins and how did it grow? And at this moment in time, can we go no and walk another way? Because my honest thing about it, with what, you know, I class myself as a bit of an adept with reading things and all the rest of it. Underneath all of that, I think Hunter Biden is still a very innocent child that is very messed up. And given the opportunity for healing, he will come out and spill his guts. And then there's a lot of others that are like that. Yeah. So can we create the space for that? And this is what I mean. We hear a lot of the, you know, particularly over the last, well, I reckon 6 years, I've been hearing it, 7, we're doing something very similar to South Africa. And
yeah. Well, truth and reconciliation.
Are we going once again to hand it over to somebody else to do it for us, or are we going to actually create the space for some of these individuals that there's been some very messed up stuff to go, you know what, dude, like you've got an opportunity, you got a reclamation moment here. There's some people around that can help you heal. And it was depicted in the Captain America type things with the Winter Soldier. Yeah, like he went to Africa, yeah, and they healed him, you know, and those types of things there. Can we actually do that individually and hold space for some of this individual? There's some that are too far gone.
Yeah.
But for Hunter Biden, for instance, I don't think he's made a decision about himself his whole life. You know, he was born into doing certain things.
I feel the same way about George W. Bush, actually.
Absolutely.
The more recent president,
as well.
Where his father was deep in it. He was full-blown Sith, purple lightning coming out of his fingertips.
Yeah.
But W was born into that. You can, I found this a long time ago. It was like a years of picture of W from when he was little. And you can see like up through like 2 or 3 years old, he's this beautiful, innocent little child. He's smiling, he's happy. And then all of a sudden, like he's just over 3 or something, he's like,
yeah.
And he just like crumples over time. And then he kind of like starts to reemerge as more like nasty, but still I hated that administration because it was, you know, very close to like the back end almost came to the front end. And that,
well, this is what I mean. You know, who was running that administration was,
but it wasn't him.
He's a fucking he's a primeval, that fucking character.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Cheney and Rumsfeld and Richard Pearl and Wolfowitz and all those guys were running it. But what I meant is you can hate that administration. You can be like, wow, he signed off on the Iraq War, and the buck did stop with him to some extent because he could have like tried to rebel against or whatever. I mean, that wouldn't have gone well for him, but nonetheless, you can sense that he wasn't totally gone. And I do feel the same way about Hunter. His dad gone. But we don't even need to, you know, like, we need to get away from this mentality of like seeking vengeance. And I understand how if you're like early in your journey. This is
what I mean, where, you know, there's that the zealot thing, because even, you know, obviously there's a Christian revival. And I'll say this, and if you need to send me a message, it's okay. I'm not going to read it. But even with Christianity, you just need to have a look at the Council of Nicaea. Like, what the fuck, you know, like, and this is the one that blows their fucking minds, is go, how many times have the popes rewritten that book and taken things out and all the rest of that type
and the
stuff.
Kings and all kinds of people.
That's what I mean. Like, and, you know, our history of that being, it's not a book of God, it's a book of people that are trying to imitate God and bring about certain things of these fanatic ism, you know. And even what Christianity once again was, look what we done in the name of so-called the Lord and Savior to the indigenous culture. So this whole thing with this Georgia Guidestones, it's the same fucking thing, just this time they're trying to create a new religion to be able to wash that over. Like, it's happened throughout all of our history, is these types of things. So it's nothing new in the zoo. You need to be able to accept that and go, okay, like, this is a system that cannot create. Or it can just, it repeats and it has the same themes. And when we see this, so, you know, those that really just jump into each rabbit hole and get to a point where they miss a key part in the development of the next part of it, is, you know, the spiritual component of it, which I spoke about last night. And then open up to the mystical arts, and then you come back and go, holy shit, what I once thought was, you know, it was good for my brain back then, but all I did was trade one belief system in for another and think that I knew. And then I created another spiritual ego about it, which then created new programs. That it's just a cycle. Can we get to that point and go, okay, this is what it is. This is the way it's playing out. What do I choose to do?
Yeah. It's so true. And it was really interesting for me when you said last night on Grant's show, he said, which is great. You guys should check that out. It's Grant Eagles is on Facebook, and he has granteagles.com. You can check that out. He said on there about how a lot of people, like, they're just blissfully going through their lives, and then suddenly they're like, oh no, I'm being red pilled, like whatever it is. They're talking to they talk to my first grader about their gender and pronouns. What? Whatever it is, that's the wake up moment for people. They tend to then go hopping down all these rabbit holes, and it's just kind of a natural thing. And for me, I had a spiritual awakening. I had this super powerful spiritual vision that showed me in symbolic form that 9/11 was going to happen in January of 2001. And then just went about my life as normal, whatever. I went to Europe, did some stuff. I was a little like sort of spiritual, smoking some pot, maybe taking some LSD or something, but wasn't super into, it didn't go super deep. And then 9/11 happened. I instantly knew it was bullshit. I instantly knew I was being lied to, which very few people did in America anyway. And I figured it out day of that there should have been pop-up missile defense to protect the Pentagon. And how didn't that happen? And where were the jets? And everyone said, oh no, that would mean the government's involved. And I'm like, okay, but where was the pop-up defense? And like, whatever. You didn't answer my question. You said that's too scary in response. So then I went through and I had, I went down all these rabbit holes, and I found out I just sort of have some sort of talent for being able to sniff out has some grain of truth versus what's total bullshit in the conspiracy realm. And back then there was a lot less bullshit as well, I think, back in 2001. And so I went down, and a bunch of stuff that's happening now was stuff that I read about 20 years ago. And I went through this period of time where I was really political, just super political, all this kind of stuff. And anyone who knows me would say I'm still very political, which is true, but I look at it totally differently now, because then after that, this space opened up for the spiritual, and I actually was initiated by a shaman. I started going down all this different stuff, became a Templar, became a practicing theurgic magician, all this kind of stuff. And so exactly what Grant described was the process that happened for me. Some people will experience it differently and have a spiritual awakening. I've also noticed that some people have a spiritual awakening, and then they don't fill in the political stuff, and then their spiritual journey can get a little weird. And in my opinion,
they hide in the light. That's what I call it.
Well put. Yes. And then some people can just get fixated on the political, and then that very often leads to black pilling, meaning that you just become totally hopeless. Everyone's control. Grant Eagles, he has more than 500 followers on Facebook. Obviously, they've got that granular at the Davos level, and they're paying Grant a healthy sum. I mean, did you get your check this month, Grant? Because I'm still waiting. I think I have a couple years back of back pay.
This is what I mean by the type of zealot type stuff, where you really get into the frame of things need to look and be a particular way to suit your frame. And if it is outside of your frame, you will be emotionally triggered.
Yes.
Because I'll say it, like a lot of folks have done in Cougar, is that they think they know a lot more than what they do, and haven't really gone into the books, so to speak. I much prefer to watch a 5-minute, 10-minute YouTube thing on, let's say, codependency, narcissism, or a whole range of different things, and then go, oh yeah, I know about it. It's like, dude, the books are like this. Or, like, are you going to go into that, or do you want to have an argument or a debate with somebody who knows their shit, and you're just going to emotionally react? This is what I mean. Once again, this emotional imperialism. It's even it's not that far in. Like, when was that? It was a couple of years ago. And I think I've said this on your thing. Anybody who's gone down a path of mastery, like, I respect. Yeah, that's just one thing with me. Even if it's a subject I don't vibe with or whatever, like that, the level of commitment to go through anyone who's committed to 10,000 hours on any discipline or anything, like, deserves respect. And I watched someone who, like, knew fuck all about something, with somebody who basically had a PhD, was doing their thesis for their PhD, okay? And they wanted to argue and continually argue that this person's gone and done 10,000 hours on multiple different subjects, even the esoteric psychology of things as well, that this other person could not. And it's like, when I broke it down and got involved, I'm like, so can you back up anything that you're saying? Oh, you've sided with him now. It's like, no. Like, can you like give me a source or anything? You know what that source was? I've been watching this on YouTube for months.
Yeah.
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 And it's like, I get it, man, but who? What? Is this just someone that's had a personal experience and spoken about it? I vibe with that, yeah. But that there is just, and this is where we're at with this whole fucking thing as well of, you know, anti-science. It's like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, look at the whole thing with
so
biology, yeah?
Yeah.
Y chromosome, X chromosome, like it's pretty fucking simple. You deny that now, you're anti-science. You know, like it is full on. You get what I mean? This is what I mean. The outlawing of language, where it's like these twisting up of things, and people firmly will jump into that with their logical understanding of how they want things to be, so that they can be emotionally appeased, and then we'll go into emotional imperialism. And there's been way too many people over a period of time that will go, oh, okay, and just cower.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up that there is a poll, and like there's a healthy in between. There's this problem of institutionalization and experts that are like caught in ivory tower and have been very much heavily indoctrinated and are not therefore worthy of trust because they don't even realize actually the degree to which they've been indoctrinated. That is real. That happens. The flip side is, just because you watched a YouTube video on whatever subject doesn't mean that your opinion is the same as this person over here. Now, can we look at this person's opinion and go, okay, well, wait a minute, there's indoctrination, there's monetary incentives, big pharma, like paid for the college, whatever. You can get into that, but you don't go from here to here. You can go, okay, well, I don't want to be indoctrinated, but I really want to go deep on the subject. I'm going to learn about it and learn at depth. And put in that commitment.
Absolutely. And this is what I mean by being able to have adult conversations, you know, because obviously you guys are dealing with it, you know, we're essentially your fucking young brother over here in Australia. But you can't now have a debate in certain circumstances anymore. Like those conversations can't be had because you've got people now that have been radicalized in their own ideology that if anything challenges their belief system, no, that doesn't matter because I feel.
Yep. Yeah.
And until we can get to having adult conversations again, which I think is just around the corner, and we're all going to have to fucking be eating that humble foe for a period of time, because there's going to need to be a lot more listening than there is repeating talking points or some of the vogue subjects of, oh, I'm an expert and thought leader in this now. It's like, well, are you really? That, you know, you've just branded yourself with that. There's going to be a lot of that through the next few years. And I'm excited that you know, I wouldn't say just the smart people, but those that are wise and have knowledge and have the crystallized experience that, you know, they're able to tell a story about things and not just academia of like, oh, I've read all of the papers, therefore now I know this. It's like, well, have you fucking gone and lived? Have you had to eat your own shit? Have you made your own fuck ups? Like, you know, the real life stuff.
You know, go ahead.
That's big. That's big.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, and I think it's important, like listeners, like stay humble. You know, like I just discovered something about myself, and I'm probably going to do some videos on it. But I am now considering myself to be a recovering nice guy. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be a good person. It means I'm not going to do this cluster of psychological. Although, you know, there's slippage, and I have to check myself on that, and that's why you have to get support when you just kind of work. But basically, as I was doing angelic magic, integrating the infernal masculine, divine masculine, infernal feminine, divine feminine was like a big part of the work. And then it's now come up for me that I needed to do some work on this thing called being a nice guy. And I'm not going to go super deep into it, but essentially it's a psychological frame of things that happened to where men started to lose their masculinity and men started to split into either a nice guy or a bad boy. And those became the two models, that it was one or the other. And if you're a bad boy, you get to fuck all the ladies and screw them over, and who cares? You're just about yourself. Yeah. And but they were able to mimic certain qualities of an integrated man to where it was more, and hold the polarity at least to where that was appealing to women. The nice guys instead started to just in an attempt to be a good man, they would do all kinds of different things and end up being really dishonest about certain things, first and foremost with themselves. And I've really discovered that about myself. And I'm realizing, wow, there's a lot of fuck ups in my own responsibility.
Covert contracts, bro.
Covert contracts. Fucking A, yeah. And so, like, I really encourage everyone to learn into this. I'm going to do some more videos about it, but I'm just trying to explain. I have just had this huge discovery of, wow, my entire adult life, I've been operating under a program that has seemed good. I thought I was the good guy. I thought I was the Jedi, the White Knight, the Silver Knight, you know, riding in to save women from the bad boys and whatever. And then didn't realize I was doing certain things that were really dishonest because it was just invisible to me. It was just straight up invisible to me. And so I've had to eat that humble food, like you said, and be like, holy shit, I made all these mistakes. I hurt women unintentionally. I did all this stuff. I understand now why certain things came up again and again and again in relationships, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I'm just saying this to say that, like, don't become rigid in your beliefs, and don't think that you've like gone beyond all this kind of stuff. I still make mistakes. I still am discovering them. And the most powerful thing you can do is to start to own your own life in whatever that looks like, and to take responsibility for the entirety of it. I had a very abusive childhood. I could lean on that all day long. It's all the rage in America, the victim Olympics. Oh, I'm more victimized than you are.
Surely you guys have fucking run out of victim cheesecake by now, man.
Like, no, man. It's the third thing Einstein
cool.
said.
It's cool. I mean, it's
stupidity,
cool
the universe.
Cool
victim cheesecake is the third thing that's inexhaustible, apparently. Yeah, no, I'm sick of the shit. I don't want that anymore in my life. But we're going to come back. We're going to take a short break here, and then we're going to come back with part 2, which will actually be like, from the viewer's point of view, it'll be like a week later or something like that. But we're going to talk about this theory that there is the very dark system. We'll just call it the Great Reset. Go ahead and trigger the algorithm with that word. But yeah, the sort of Great Reset model, the transhumanism, Davos, it sort of ties into the Epstein. It ties into a lot of the super dark magic. I call it personally the Malachian system, because I see it from a spiritual paradigm. But there's this emergent theory that dovetails into what a friend of mine who, my friend that I mentioned earlier, who's very into deep politics, very into deep law. We're going to do a whole show about admiralty law and that whole rabbit hole, maritime law at some point with him. But he came to me from a very materialist sort of point of view, legal point of view, and from researching stuff about the Black Nobility, that he sees what he calls a schism at the top. Grant came in with his whole thing of that there's one structure and it's going away, and that there was then another one that was going to kind of pop into place behind it. And Grant has I'm not going to put too much words in Grant's mouth, but just to say that it had a similar look to me to what also the spirits were telling me, that the Malachian system is done. And then starting in 2025, a new system is going to begin to emerge. And really in 2030, it'll really emerge. And then I started running into recently Christian mystics saying the exact same thing, different frame, different judgments. They basically said an Ahrimanic or satanic system was being put up specifically to be knocked down almost as a straw man, so people wouldn't see that the new, more insidious system, this is their belief, of a Luciferian Promethean with like anti-grav and like much more liberty than you'd have under the Malachian system, Just more classic non-Christian Luciferian impulse, spreading knowledge, spiritualization. If you want a Christian perspective on Lucifer that somewhat dovetails with my own, it'd probably be Steiner's frame for Lucifer. But there's this new belief that's emerging among Christian mystics of, okay, well, the satanic system is going to be defeated, but we have to watch out for the Luciferian system, blah, blah, blah. And so in part 2, we're going to discuss this idea of competing models, and Grant even has like a more advanced and I don't know, more nuanced take even on this. But we're gonna sort of tease out and talk about that idea. And so yeah, come back for part 2. And thank you so much for viewing. And be sure you check out Grant. I've already had it, the little scroller at the bottom's already said this, but be sure you check out Grant's material, granteagles.com. I'll have the link below. And hit and smash that like and subscribe button while you're at it. If you've gotten this far, you definitely should if you're not already subscribed. All right, thank you. And we'll come back shortly for part 2. Thanks. All right. So I'm gonna, let's see.